Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Origin Weekly Dialogue. This is our fourth Origin Weekly Dialogue through live, and today we are going to host Dr. Steven van Belleghem from Belgium. Previously, we hosted Peter Ivanov, who spoke about the powerful virtual teams, and also we hosted also Cyril Kortlevin, and the first speaker was Dr. Ahmed Al-Banna, the CEO of Origin Group.
Good evening.
Hi, Dr. Ahmed. Hi. I think Steven lost the voice. He will log on in a few seconds.
Very good. In fact, today I think in our dialogue today we are going really to focus on a very important subject, which is the customer services. And basically, today the whole world is really not talking about customer service, but also customer experience. That's what Dr. Steven will be focused on. Later on, I'm going to raise a couple of questions. I think I will leave
Steven is back here.
All right.
Yeah. Can you hear me now, Safa?
Yeah.
Okay.
Your voice is clear now.
Okay, that's good news.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
So before you start, Steven, I just would like to give a brief about you. So Steven van Belleghem is an international keynote speaker. These past years, Steven has given more than 1,000 presentations at events in over 40 countries. His core expertise is the future of customer centricity, the combination between customer-centric thinking and the latest technologies, and the human touch is the guiding principle in Steven's stories. Before we start, Steven, thank you again for joining us. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Safa. Thank you. And good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here and to speak to all of you. I'm going to share my screen now and show you a presentation that I prepared for today. Here we go. So if everything is right, you can see my slides right now. So I prepared a presentation about the future of customer experience. And if you look around the world right now, because of COVID-19, we are like in the middle of the biggest digital training course the world has ever seen. Everything that we do in many countries around the world now is all related to digital. And you know, in most markets, people are working from home, and we discovered some benefits of that, and we discovered some downsides of that. It's not always easy, but this is part of our new normal. Probably in a normal situation, I would be live in one of your countries in a beautiful room speaking to all of you. Tonight, I am in Belgium, and you are in your house or in your part of the world, and we can see each other in 2D instead of 3D. This is the biggest digital training course the world has ever seen. We use digital for entertainment. I look at the results of Netflix in the last quarter. It was amazing to see how successful their growth was. Disney started with a new streaming service called Disney Plus at the end of last year. And I think they're very happy that they launched this because the Disney parks are closed, the movies are postponed, the cruise ships are docked. And luckily they have Disney Plus, a direct-to-consumer streaming service where people can, it's a Netflix kind of model. People can subscribe and then they have access to all the wonderful content of Disney. And this is really powerful to them, and it's an enormous success. The service is now 6 months old, and 2 months ago they had 30 million subscribers. Now they have more than 50 million subscribers, which makes it one of the most successful product launches in history. And of course, the fact that we need digital for entertainment right now and that so many people are in their house is one of the drivers of their growth. We use digital for entertainment. We use digital for communication. The usage of WhatsApp, for instance, has increased with more than 40% in the last few months. And it's almost a miracle that tools like WhatsApp, Instagram, and Facebook are still up and running if you see the boost in usage. Entertainment, communication, work, but also commerce. It was fascinating to see that Amazon announced in the first week of the lockdown in the United States that they had to hire 100,000 additional workers, employees, to keep up with the demand. This was in March. And then 2 weeks after that, they had to hire another 75,000 to keep up with demand. So you see how many of these big technology companies are now like magnets for people's attention and people's time. Instacart is another cool example. Instacart is like a grocery shopping service. You can go to Instacart and you select your favorite grocery store. Then you select the items that you would like, and then they send one to the store to pick that up for you and they bring it to your house. These guys were doing okay before the crisis started. Now they had to hire 300,000 additional employees to keep up with demand. Shopify is a Canadian company, which is the largest e-commerce platform in the world next to the big technology platforms of companies like Alibaba and Amazon. Shopify typically works with other companies and retailers all over the place. They mentioned that their platform is now handling Black Friday level traffic every single day. So what used to be the peak until 2019 has become an average norm in 2020. It's going really fast, and digital barriers are being removed everywhere you look. And in my opinion, they won't come back. This was the biggest digital training course the world has ever seen. That's the customer side. If you look at the company side, it's also one of the biggest exercises in the usage of digital. Many people were not ready to let their employees work from home, and suddenly they had to do it in a few days' time. Many companies were not ready for e-commerce, and suddenly they had to do it in a few weeks' time. So this has been one of the biggest exercises in the usage of digital for companies. And I want to show you this. I don't know all the rules in terms of restriction for COVID-19 in your countries. In the Netherlands, the country next to my country, Belgium, and in Belgium as well, all bars and cafes and restaurants are closed, and restaurants are investing in takeaway food. So they have figured out a new business model, but many cafes are suffering and don't know what to do. And then you have this cafe here. It's called Luigi's. It's from the Netherlands. And Luigi's is organizing an online bingo game every Saturday evening now. So these guys moved into the world of virtual entertainment. And this is like a bar in a small village in the Netherlands, and it's like the only place where you can have a drink in that little city. And now you can get your bingo cards every week. You pay 12 euros for that, and they get prices from other local entrepreneurs in their village. And now more than 600 to 700 people are participating in this game every week. So suddenly these guys are making a higher revenue than before because they arrived in the world of digital entertainment. Another thing that they're doing, this is in Dutch, but let me translate this for you. It's an online beer tasting, so people cannot go to the bar anymore to have a beer. So what they're doing is actually inviting people to order beer, and then they bring it to the house, and then they do a virtual beer tasting to, keep the business going. And for me, this is a wonderful example of an organization that was being blocked of doing business, and now suddenly they figured out a way how to do that. Another example is Panera Bread, which is a bakery store. And they're also selling sandwiches and salads and wraps and stuff like that. And, these guys were already good in e-commerce. They had a good e-commerce infrastructure. They had a good delivery infrastructure. So they didn't rely on delivery companies. They did their own delivery at Panera Bread. So they had quite some things in place. And then now in many parts in the United States, there's lack of food, there's scarcity. Apparently they have two kind of supply lines in the US, one for stores, and that one is having some hiccups. And on the other hand, you have the supply chain for restaurants, which is still doing its thing, but restaurants are not selling as much as in the past. So there's scarcity of food in the one supply chain, there's too much food in the other one. So at Panera Bread, they said, you know what? Why don't we use all these ingredients that we have and start our own grocery service? So now this restaurant chain, this bakery chain, became a grocery store. They saw a need in the market, they have the infrastructure ready, and they made sure that they could fulfill that. And it took them 2 weeks to do that. So you see the resilience, the flexibility of entrepreneurs, of businesses around the world is really incredible to see right now. This is also a fantastic example from China. It's JD, the second largest e-commerce company in China after the Alibaba group. And they had invested, they had the technology ready for driverless vehicles, for autonomous vehicles. But they could never try it out because the streets in the Chinese cities were too busy with cars and motorcycles and people. And suddenly the streets were empty. like in Wuhan, where the whole Corona thing started, suddenly the streets were empty. And JD said, well, why don't we roll out this autonomous technology? This could be an opportunity to test it in the wild, in the real world. So that's what they did. And many Chinese people thought like, oh, wow, this is really cool because we can order food now, we can order products, and there's no human interaction involved. So this is a very safe way to actually buy products and food. So what happened is JD, before they used this, they had 300,000 orders a day. Suddenly, they had like 600,000 orders a day because people thought it was more safe than it was before. And they, JD just took the opportunity of empty cities to roll out the technology that was actually ready in the lab and rolled it out in the real world right now. And sometimes it looks scary. I don't know if this is happening in other countries as well, but I saw this yesterday in Singapore. This is one of the Boston Dynamic robots. It's called Spot, and it walks around in a park. And then if people are too close, it warns the people. It can also smell if there were too many people at the same place. So this is automated security. In my country, this would be really scary if we would start with this. People would not like it. But in Singapore, this is part of the new reality right now. So you see a lot of people that were like unthinkable a few weeks ago are happening today. The barriers are gone and they won't come back. And what you see is that you have two types of companies. You have companies who were ready for this, and you have companies who were surprised by this. And when you were ready, you can take a leapfrog now. When you were surprised, it's going to be really tough because you have to catch on and you have to speed up your game like never before. The good news, the optimistic news of this whole evolution is that potentially we could be at the beginning of what they call the golden age of digital. And the golden age is a principle that was invented by this professor. Her name is Carlota Perez. She is an economics professor in South America, in Colombia. And she's one of the world references in doing research about technological revolutions. And she's been looking at the 5 big transformational technological revolutions of the last 240 years, which started in 1771 with the Industrial Revolution. Then we had the age of steel, we had the age of heavy engineering, we had mass production. Now we're in the information technology revolution. Every revolution takes about 50 to 60 years, and they all have the same pattern. At a certain moment, you have the evolution and the arrival of new technology that creates a bubble. And a bubble means that you have a handful of people that really take advantage of the new technology and become the big winners. But it's also creating like income inequality. It feels like some people are taking advantage of the technology. Other people cannot keep up with that. That happened in all the evolutions. And then suddenly, bam, a big crisis happens. And after that big crisis, the golden age begins. And the golden age means that the technology is widespread, and because of that, many people can use the possibilities of that. Carlota Perez thought at a certain moment that maybe the golden age would start after the financial crisis of 2008. It didn't happen. Now many people are convinced that this is the time because the technology is becoming more widespread, and people all over the world, all kind of profiles, are understanding how digital is working and create more opportunities than ever before. So there's a big chance that in 2030, if we look back to 2020, that we will say that was the first day of the golden age of digital. Let's hope for that. And you see signals. Satya Nadella, CEO of Microsoft, he said, we have seen more digital transformation in the last 2 months than in the past 2 years. I mentioned Spotify. If you look at the growth pattern of Shopify right now, it is amazing to see how fast things are going. Look at the fast growth of online medical consultations. Since January, in the last 4 months, it went up times 36. Look at the growth of virtual property showrooms, real estate. It went up times 35. And that was only at the beginning of the whole restrictions that we had all over the world. So you see how fast these new technologies are now becoming part of everything that we do. And I'm convinced that we're going to see that in the future of customer experience. We're redefining the offline world right now. Like in Belgium, stores could open up yesterday again, and store managers did amazing jobs to make shopping safe and enjoyable for customers. Restaurants will probably open in a few more weeks. They're still figuring out how they will be able to serve people from 1.5 meters distance. So they're doing some experiments over here, but we're not quite sure if this is the best technique to actually deal with the situation. So there's still some work to be done. But one thing is certain, when all this is over, we're gonna wake up in a hybrid world. When you look through the window as a manager or a business owner, you don't see the full world anymore. The big chunk of the world has become digital. It's just out there. It's invisible, but it's part of everything that we do. And I'm convinced that even in the offline world, everything will have a digital layer. Let me give you this example here. This is an example from Amazon. And maybe you're familiar with the Amazon Go stores that they have. Those are stores that you walk in, you take what you want, and then you walk back out. So you don't have to wait in line. You don't have to do the hustling with the payment. You just walk in, you grab what you need, and you walk out. And they're using state-of-the-art AI sensors and all kind of technologies to make this as safe and secure as possible. And this has been rolled out in small, convenient shops in Seattle and San Francisco, for instance, and New York. Now, just a week before they closed everything down in the US, they started with the Amazon Go grocery store, which is a large-scale supermarket that is using the technology of those small stores. So basically, it's the same thing. You walk in those stores, you take what you want, you walk out, you don't have to wait in line, you don't have to do the payment. And basically, Amazon created this as a convenient alternative for a traditional supermarket. And it is more convenient, but at the same time, today, this is like the safest possible way of shopping that you have today. There's no human interaction needed. And now they want to boost it. They want to create thousands of stores like this. And they will actually license this technology to movie theaters, sports stadiums, airports, train stations, all those places where we like to eat or drink something, but we don't want to waste a lot of time. This is how they will roll this out. And this is an example of this hybrid world. It's offline, but it has a big digital layer on top of it. McDonald's is doing the same thing. But we've all seen a big transformation of these kiosks and the restaurants of McDonald's. But now they're going to go one step further. Like, one of the secret weapons of McDonald's is their app. And thanks to the app, they learn a lot about the users. And they learn what kind of products people like. And now they will use that information to go to the next level of personalization. Like, a year ago, they acquired a company called Dynamic Yield, which is an artificial and machine learning company. And now they're going to use that AI knowledge combined with the data that they have from the app to personalize the drive-thrus of McDonald's. Today, if you go to a McDonald's drive-thru, the menu is the same for all of us. But the problem is, if you're like a vegetarian, you really have to look for your kind of food, because it's like a printed menu, right? It's the same for all of us. If they can personalize this, they can basically make sure that if you are a vegetarian, that the vegetarian options are on top and they're nicely displayed. And what will happen is that you will feel welcome. This is adapted to your personal taste. So this is the next step that they're going to take. This is an offline experience, but they add a digital layer on top of that, an invisible layer that will make the experience more personalized and more convenient for you. So these, in my opinion, are all signals of how we're entering this golden age of digital. And as you all know, we're at the beginning of a new decade. It's the 2020s that we're in. And let's be honest, they started differently than what we hoped for. But next to that, it's also the beginning of some new technologies, what we call general purpose technologies. If you look to the last 10 years, the key technologies that drove change were 4G, social media, and mobile. Now, in the next 10 years, we're going to see the growth and the increase in maturity in artificial intelligence, 5G, quantum computing, and robotics. 4 technologies that have the potential to basically change every potential industry. And together, they have a huge potential to change society, the way that we live, the way that we work, and of course, the relations that we have with our customers. Now, imagine that these technologies would already be matured during a crisis like the one that we're in right now. Things would be different. AI would be used for setting diagnosis in a better way. 5G would allow us to have telehealthcare in a much more high quality way than today. quantum computers would help to find medication and a vaccine in a much faster way than we have now. And if we don't have enough healthcare workers, or if it's too dangerous to get the disease for certain people, we would use robots to deliver meals and medication. All the items today on this slide are already in action today, but the truth is they're at the beginning of their curve. This is a very early stage of development. And the question is, what will the second half of this curve look like? Once we're in 2030, what will become the norm? What will be normal thanks to these technologies? How will the way that we interact with our customers change because of these technologies? I'm convinced that we're at the beginning of a new kind of customer expectations, a new curve that arises driven by the potential of these new technologies, driven by the personal challenges and dreams that all of us have, and driven by the challenges the world is facing. I'm convinced that this is a new beginning of customer expectations. And I've built a model that I want to share with all of you to illustrate how you can build your customer experience for the future. Of course, you will always need a good product, service, and price. That will always be the case. Next to that, there is need for automated interfaces. Digital interfaces that work in the most convenient way will become part of the new normal. This is about installing transactions that are almost perfect. This is about optimizing every detail of your customer journey. And in my opinion, these are the characteristics that will describe the interface for the next few years. I think in the next few years, interfaces will become more invisible, more personalized, will demand less efforts from customers, and will act proactively. They will solve your problems before you even know that you have a problem. But the truth is, many technology platforms are taking advantage of this. We have technology platforms like, Alibaba, WeChat, Amazon, Facebook, Google. Those kind of companies are now in rapid growth. They're growing faster than they were before this crisis. And if you look to companies like Amazon or Google, this is their model that they're trying to install. Their goal is that as many transactions as possible are happening on their platforms, and that we go to them to buy stuff. And there are three scenarios. Just imagine that you go to a company like Amazon or a local alternative in your market, and you say, hey, Amazon, I need Colgate toothpaste. That is perfect, because then you will get Colgate toothpaste. Then you're the yellow circle on this slide. They will offer you what you ask for. That's simple. But the question is, what happens if you say, hey, Amazon, I need batteries? Will you get Amazon branded batteries, or will you get batteries that are like the green circle, that have great data, have great reviews, and they will get through the filter, they get filtered in? Or will we also have brands like the red circle on this slide that get filtered out because they don't have very competitive benchmarks and data, so they basically become invisible for the customer? This is what the Amazons and the Googles of this world are trying to achieve. This is how the Alibabas and the WeChats of this planet works. And it has benefits to work like this, also for companies that work with those platforms, of course, because you can scale out to many people. But still, I'm convinced that this is a high urgency to invest more in branding, to make sure that people specifically ask for your brand. Next to that, it's also about maintaining and investing in the direct relationship with your end user. I think value can be created if customers come to you directly. So this is one of the biggest and most vital assets that you should go for, the direct relationship with your customer. And you can do that by creating transactional perfection. That's one part of this whole story. And yes, convenience will be stretched in the next few years. We will have more automation. It will be more invisible. But I'm convinced that pretty soon it will be a commodity. If you have digital convenience, fine. People will think it's the most normal thing in the world. If you don't have it, you're in deep trouble. But it will become hard to differentiate with this. And this is where the next level starts. So the next level is make sure that you can become a partner in life of your customers, because people will start to expect more than just digital convenience, which will become the norm, the most normal thing in the world. And the truth is, we live in ages of bucket lists and dreams. Many people have dreams and hopes and ambitions, and they want to do cool stuff in their life. And on the other hand, you have people that live from paycheck to paycheck. And more people will end up in poverty because of the crisis that we're having right now. So question is how to relate to that. So I like to use these examples here, Aldi and Lidl, as an example of how you can become a partner in life for people that live from paycheck to paycheck. Maybe these companies are not just hard discount retailers. Maybe they just facilitate people to make it easier to reach the end of the month financially, or they can help them to have a nice dinner with their family because of the existence of their business model. So, we've been talking a lot about the purpose of a company. What should your organization do? I think this is a great moment to turn that around and to wonder, how can you help your customers with their purpose? How can you turn that game around, and how can you facilitate them? And how can you understand the human behind the customer? How can you help them in achieving that life journey? And I want to show you this example from the Netherlands. It's a company called Centraal Beheer. It's an insurance company that is very much focused on their customers. They want to reach a net promoter score of plus 50, which is highly unusual in the insurance industry. But they want to go beyond selling insurances. And I have some screenshots here from their website. It's in Dutch, but I will explain you the principle. For instance, what they're doing is they are selling solar panels through their website. Solar panels are now big here in Europe, and many people want them, but many people think it's a big hustle to install that, so they don't really know how to do that. So this insurance company facilitates this for their customers, because they have, in the last year, they had 5,000 claims from people who had a bad experience with their solar panels. So they perfectly know which suppliers are doing a good job and which suppliers are doing a lousy job. And now they're using that knowledge to actually select the best suppliers and install this on the houses of their customers. And they go beyond this. They want to create experiences that go further than just selling an insurance product. Like in the Netherlands, next year, it will be obliged to install smoke detectors in people's homes. And as an insurance company, there are two things you can do. You can send them a letter and say, hey, dear client, you need to install your smoke detector. Don't forget about that. What this company, Centraal Beheer, is doing, they are actually telling them, guys, you need a smoke detector, but you know what? Shall we install that for you? So their ambition is to become a partner in living for their customers, not just selling insurance companies products, but offering them services that will make their life in their house easier and more convenient. They want to save out energy and time of their customers. They want to understand the life journey and offer value in that situation. And if they succeed in that, at that moment, you don't just optimize the transactions, you optimize the emotions as well. That is part number 3. And then the last one is about how can you, preferably together with your customers, have a positive impact on society? And how can you become a responsible company? More and more research is showing that customers want to buy from companies who take their responsibility. And the reason is that we're facing some important choices in the world right now. We were all surprised by COVID, and we already feel in different parts of the world the tension between the economy and healthcare. This is a different balancing act. But the beauty of this crisis is that you see how many companies are using their strengths, are using their assets to help and add value to society. Like LVMH, the global luxury brand holding, they started to make hand sanitizers instead of perfumes. And other companies followed them in that lead. And companies like Coca-Cola said in the Philippines, we're going to stop with advertising, but we're going to use that money to support the worst affected communities. But my favorite example comes from Lego. In many European countries, we had shortage of protective clothing and materials for healthcare workers. Like there were not enough of those plastic face masks. So Lego in Denmark, they completely rebuilt their factory, and it allowed them to produce 13,000 of these face masks a day suddenly. And you know what I really like about this? The cool thing is that they basically used the model of these little space minifigures, like the little helmet here, to make these protective clothes and that protective goggles for the healthcare workers. And the coolest thing of all is when you get your Lego safety goggles, you basically have to put them together yourself, like with real Lego. So I thought this was so cool that, you know, Lego is helping out society, they're adding value to society, but they're keeping that Lego touch in there. I thought that was the most awesome thing that I've seen in terms of companies helping out others. But the truth is, we're facing some really important choices. We have the healthcare debate, but next to that, it's all, the climate issue is not gone as well. And there's still many issues to be solved from that perspective. And there are more and more issues to be solved. And if you look at research, the truth is that there are more consumers that look at companies to solve this than that consumers look at governments. Consumers really expect corporations to make a difference and add value to society. They're asking us to take our responsibility and make a difference. Now, to make this concrete, how can you add value to society? I like to play with this concept, the concept of trade-offs. The truth is that today, all of us, we have to make trade-offs every day. We have to choose between privacy and convenience, for instance, or we have to choose between buying cheap products or products that were produced in an ethical way. We have to choose between our personal money and freedom or doing well for the planet. And that trade-off is not always a fun thing. Consumers don't like trade-offs, but there's no other choice in many markets. And this is something that I'm very optimistic about. I think that many organizations will start to have the mindset to remove or reduce the trade-offs. We also have the new technologies that can facilitate us in doing so. So in the next few years, we're going to see many of those trade-offs being removed and being reduced. And let me give you a simple example. The balancing act between people who like fireworks versus animals who basically hate fireworks. Animals go nuts because of fireworks. Well, that can be solved thanks to small miniature drones. Maybe you've seen these images from New Year's Eve in Shanghai, where they used thousands of these mini drones to tell a story. It's not like fireworks, but maybe it's even better. You can basically create these unique shapes. You can also add beautiful music to it, and you could tell a whole story. And at the same time, you're not hurting animals. So this is creating a unique, fantastic experience, but the downsides are gone. That's the end of trade-off. Another example is this, the choice between my money, my freedom, and the planet. Like personally, me, I'm not a vegetarian. I like to eat meat now and then, not too much, but I like it. But I also know that if you eat meat, that it's basically bad for your personal health and it's bad for the environment. So that's a difficult choice to make. Well, maybe in the near future, we will have solutions for that. In many countries, you now have companies that are making plant-based meat. Impossible Burgers is one of those examples. Impossible Burgers makes meat in the lab. And their goal is not to target vegetarians. Their goal is to target people like me, people who like the taste of meat. And I've been working with Impossible Burgers for years now. I've taken many people to their offices. I've given them blind tastings of Impossible meat. So meat that doesn't contain any meat. It's made in a lab, but it has the texture, the juice, the smell, and the taste of meat. And when you give that to people and you don't tell them anything, and you put like a piece of meat between some bread and you add some vegetables to it, they don't have a clue that they're eating plant-based meat. If you tell them, then they dive into it, and you can still see the difference. You can still taste the difference. I'm very well aware of that. But these products are at the beginning of their curve, and they're already so good. So imagine that you add 2 years to that, 5 years to that, 10 years to that. That could make a huge difference in quality and offering people a product that is exactly the same as meat without the health and without the climate downsides of it. And even though it's still an early phase for these companies, they're already getting some traction. Like Impossible Foods is now working together with Burger King, which is creating scale for them. You can find their products in the supermarket. So you feel that they're at the beginning of the curve, but they're getting traction, and there is a fantastic growth potential for these organizations. I'm so optimistic about that. The end of trade-off, the combination of a mindset and the possibilities of new technologies to make sure that people can buy in a guilt-free kind of way. Remove trade-offs. And this is my invitation to all of you. How can you climb this ladder? Build a new kind of customer experience that goes beyond product and price, that even goes beyond digital convenience, but that adds that partner in life philosophy, that takes its responsibility to have a positive impact on the world. And if you do that, you can create an offer people can't refuse. And this is the research that I've been working on for the last year. I'm finishing up my new book. This will be the title of the book, The Offer You Can't Refuse. It will be released in September. And this is the topic. How will customer expectations evolve? What will it look like when we go beyond convenience? What will the next curve of customer expectations look like? And how can you, create that curve yourself as an organization and create the offer people can't refuse? And I just want to add one more thing to this. Are you familiar with the movie Aladdin and the story Aladdin and the Lamp? I'm sure you do. I've recently been in Jordan where they made this movie. I was really fascinated by the beauty of that country, and it reminded me all the time to the movie when I was walking around in Wadi Rum in the beautiful desert. But you know the story. You find a lamp, you rub the lamp, the genie comes out, you get 3 wishes. Then the question is, what do you do with your wishes? What would be your first wish? Would you ask something for yourself? Or would you choose something for your children or friends or family? Or would you solve a world problem? I don't know. I've tried this out in the real world. If I would be with you guys right now, I would ask you to raise hands. And I've tried this in all parts of the world. In the last 6 months, I've done a real life experiment with this simple question all over the world, from the Middle East to Asia, to the US, Europe. I tried this out with all age groups, all kind of professional profiles. And I can tell you this, it was always the same answer. 95% picked something for themselves or their family. Only a minor group wants to solve a world problem. And is that an issue? No, it's just a reality that this model works bottom up. First, people want to have a great product and price. Then they want to have the easiest interface as possible. And then they're happy to help you to save the world. It doesn't work the other way around. Many companies are sometimes frustrated because they're doing such great things for the planet, but they don't get the reward from the customer. Well, usually that's because their interfaces are not good enough. It only works bottom up. The customer wants to have its own benefits first before he or she wants to help to save the planet. That's something you need to keep into account when you create the offer you can't refuse. And this is my invitation to you guys. Look at your industry. Look at how far you guys are, how far you are up in this ladder. And I don't know your markets. I don't know the local markets. I don't know your industries at this point. Maybe you think, hey, I'm in an industry that is just product priced. Well, that would be the best news of the evening, because then you just have to invest a little bit more in automated interfaces and you're going to win. If the entire market already has fantastic digital interfaces, well, then you're going to have to speed up your game and make sure you become a partner in life. So the internal benchmark is important, but also the long-term perspective. How fast will my market climb up this ladder until the top, and how urgent will it become to make a difference all the way up from a good product, but also to change the world together with customers in a positive way? How far are you up? How far can you go? How far are you willing to go? We're at the beginning of a new curve of customer expectations, driven by new technologies, personal challenges, and global challenges. And my invitation to all of you is dare to dream about a perfect customer relationship. Work your way up and make a difference for customers. And this is my last slide. This is my favorite quote in terms of customer experience from Steve Jobs, who said it many times. And this is my invitation to all of you. Dare to dream about the best possible customer experience, then work your way back and start building that experience yourself to make sure you can offer people something they simply cannot refuse because it's so good. I want to wish all of you good luck with this in your journey to create the offer you can't refuse. If you like my content, I would invite you to join me on YouTube, Instagram, LinkedIn, or Twitter. I'm sharing a lot of content there, and it would be an honor to welcome all of you there. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen and see if we have some time for a question, and I'll be more than happy to facilitate that. And for now, thank you very much for listening to my talk. I really appreciate it. I'm very excited to see that we had 70 people here in the room. So that is a brilliant success of this evening. Thank you for organizing this for me tonight. And thanks for being here, everyone.
Thank you, Stephen. It's really mind-blowing how world is changing very fast. Thank you for the massive information and knowledge you shared with us. I'm sure that there were a lot of companies who were just thinking about how to be agile and adapt with the digitalization, AI, and emerging technologies. But when the pandemic of coronavirus started to spread more and more, they started hurrying their execution to adapt and be at the top of it. Thank you again for your great presentation. Now I will give the floor to Dr. Ahmed Al-Banna to start the dialogue and throw some questions to Dr. Stephen. Dear participants, if you have any question, you can just write in the chat space. Dr. Ahmed Al-Banna, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Safa, for the host, and thank you, Dr. Stephen, for this wonderful session. I have personally very much enjoyed it. I have seen also the chat of our dear participants from different parts of the world. Also, they like the content. They said is very rich. But, you know, as you said, the world is changing. And customers, they are expecting more and more, despite the difficulties that organizations are facing. Yes. So, as you said, the curve is really going to go up. So maybe I have a couple of questions on behalf of my colleagues. Question number one, always we hear that the customers are not always right, but they are always the customer. Now, with what you highlighted is the COVID-19 has brought many things forward because people are working on the top emerging technologies, including the digitalization. When you showed beginning of your slide, you said, digitalization for entertainment. When you showed Disney, digitalization for commerce and so on. Now, with the customers are expecting more, but there is a pressure on the organization, particularly the service industry, banks, retail industries. You wrote example of Alibaba, Tobo, and etc. Airlines, and you name it. What is your comment on that, Stephen?
Yeah, it's a very good question, a very good point. It's very difficult for many organizations. I've been talking to some retailers today, for instance, and first they had to close in many parts of the world, and they had to switch quickly to digital. Many are now successful with it, but they suddenly have to reopen the store, and now they don't have enough time to deal with it. So I think there's no easy answer. I think there's no shortcut here. I think that it will ask more work for this in-between phase that we're in right now. And personally, I think that the biggest impact they can make is on two levels. First, the digital level, where I think they will have to train themselves to become more efficient, to learn which channels can be used, what works and what doesn't work. I think that's going to be a learning curve, and that just needs more time and energy. The second thing is the humans, of course. I have a feeling that a lot of people are missing human contact, real human contact. We see each other in 2D now instead of 3D, and you're missing the real interaction. So when you see a human in a retail store or in a financial services environment, I think it's really important that those humans are ready to and are mentally ready for top-notch service, because today people want to, they want to share excitement of seeing people in the real life. So I see challenges in the digital part where the learning curve will ask more investments in time and energy. I think there's no shortcut there. And at the same time, we will need our positive energy as humans to welcome people more than ever and to make them feel safe and welcome at the same time. But I see you, I follow you. It's going to be very tough. It's going to ask for more energy and more efforts from many organizations, and the pressure was already on. So I think it's going to be an intense 12 months that we have ahead of us because of that.
Very good, very good, very good. That's related. I'll take you to another one level up. Yeah. You also mentioned in your presentation that there are two types of companies, particularly in the service industry. We mentioned, for example, airlines, banks, retail, hospitals, the fast food, different types. There are two types of companies. There is the ready companies who predicted the future and they work heavily on the digitalization and so on. And there are other companies who were surprised. You put it in that brackets, were surprised. Because, COVID-19 has all of a sudden, just came through. Now, what is your recommendation? Give me one or two recommendations for those organizations who surprised. What do they have to do now?
Yeah, I think they have to focus on digital transactions related to customers at this moment. And a very simple one is, the ones that were surprised, those are the ones that are, for instance, not active on social media. They don't have a big reach and they don't know how to reach out to their customers. At that moment, luckily, we have tools that you can start to use right away. You have WhatsApp, you have Zoom, you have email still, where you can just reach out to customers. So I think what's really important to them, for those who are surprised, create content, share that in a one-on-one kind of relationship with your customers and start a one-on-one conversation, even maybe with thousands of people. And again, it will take efforts, but this is something you can do. It doesn't ask for a digital investment. It just asks for more time and energy that you put into it. But I'm so strongly believing in the impact that you can create there.
Good. The other questions also has always come my mind and always has been asked by our customers, which is the traditional customer service, the frontliners. You go, for example, in a bank, you see the customer services front lines, the tellers, you get to the airlines, also you see these ones. Now with this digitalization and so on, do you think that robots will take over? What's going to happen? If you just give me right a snapshot, last 10 years we have seen the situation. Today with COVID, different situation. So what's going to happen tomorrow with this? What do we need to do? Do we need to do something about it?
Well, I think in certain interactions where you have a very functional relationship with a human, like an airport check-in, a hotel check-in, I think many of them will be automated now because of COVID-19. And I don't see them to return to what it was before, because it's going to create a new kind of efficiency and people will like that. And automation can be with the screen, can be with our phones, can be with robots. But I'm also very strongly convinced that we have other types of transactions than just functional ones. We have transactions that are more emotional, that are about fun, that are about sharing warmth between each other. That's where we're going to need the humans. So I see two tracks in all industries. The efficiency part will now be automated because of safety pressure, and I don't think that will come back, but it will create time and space on other places where humans will be able to make a difference.
Very good. That's great. I go to the last question, then I will leave the floor to Safa, because I'm sure Safa within Origin and Al-Asail group also in Oman and Origin International in Saudi Arabia, they have offers. We have offers, training courses, online, many. So Safa will be talking about that. But the last, a bit really I need really to cover is, customer centricity. You tackle this one, customer centricity, where it stands, in fact, with the world of the digitalization and so on. Can you just highlight in a few minutes on that?
Well, customer centricity is about making, I like to think from scarce resources that customers have. People have lack of time, lack of money, lack of energy. Those are assets that a lot of people would like to have more of. I think customer centricity is about helping people to save out time or make time more relevant, to give people energy or make sure that they don't have to waste energy. And the customer experience is the combination of all interactions that you have with an organization, and digital can be very good in increasing the efficiency for people and helping them to save out time. I think that is the focus of digital for customer centricity.
Very good. Well, I'm sure if we'll go through, it's very interesting with you, because there is a lot to offer. And I know a professional speaker, Dr. Stephen, like you need to be on the stage, not in a locked room. And I know on the stage what you will do, because we know your capabilities, but hopefully we will be hosting you live in the region. after the COVID-19, after the coronavirus, you know, hopefully maybe end of this year or 2021, because we know that you have a lot to offer, because we enjoyed your examples, massive example within this almost 50 minutes. You showed many examples, many case studies, many stories. So that's fantastic. So thank you very much, Dr. Steven, from my part, before I hand over to my colleagues. Thank you very much, our participants from different parts of the world, particularly our colleagues from Saudi Arabia, our colleagues in Oman, because they're linked with the Al-Asail there, and from different parts of the world, and in particular also from Bahrain. So thank you very much, Dr. Steven. Look forward to meet you face to face in the short term. Let's pray for everybody. Let's stay safe. Everybody safe. Safa, floor is yours.
Thank you for the kind words.
Thank you, Dr. Ahmed. And we have more questions. I think 2 questions from the attendees. But before I just read the questions, I would like to mention that if you like the delivery of Dr. Steven and you are interested to have more of mind-blowing information and ideas, now you will get the offer for the 2-day paid session delivered by Steven. So you can just click on the offer, which will pop up, and register for the next session. So Steven, back to the questions. I have here Makki Abbas. He said, thank you, Steve, for a wonderful presentation. My question is that, as you may be aware that the SMEs are the major companies percentage-wise in any nations, yes, how would these organizations can move to automation? Which one in your mind you think can serve their customers online?
Yeah, I know SMEs are crucial to every economy. When I look at digital, I see 3 things. I see everything that happens before a sale. I see the sale and after sales. To make it very simple, I think the beginning where I would focus on is communication. Everything that has to is before you actually sell something. I think that is a part that every SME should focus on. Today, there's so many tools available. Social media tools, that it would be a shame not to have a good content strategy to share your stories there and to make sure that you build your brand and reputation by doing so, not by selling stuff, but through adding value. That would be my first priority as an SME.
Great. I have also another question from Shakir. His question is, how can we invest on the public organizations?
On public organizations, the governments, yeah, it's there it's a different story. Yeah, there I would focus on transactions and service, because people know the government, of course, and we're all customers of the government of our country. So in a government world, I would put all my money in making sure that people can get great, fantastic service through digital channels, that you make sure that the self-service is up to speed, but also that you can have, you know, remote service through these kind of interfaces. I would put my focus there.
Yeah, this is exactly what's been happening in Bahrain. Like, they shifted like majority of services in government to like automated or through e-government. And the last question, just to conclude, from Khalid, he said, can we have a link for the course material and recording for the webinar? Yeah, of course, the session is recorded and we'll get it on Origin's YouTube channel. So just to conclude, again, thank you, Steven, for your fruitful presentation. It was really inspiring. And of course, as Dr. Ahmed Banna mentioned, we'll see you soon on field, on the stage, for our upcoming events. And of course, if anyone have any question, just log to our website, whether Al-Asail in Oman or Bahrain, sorry, Origin International or Origin Group in Bahrain. Thank you again, and wish you all the best.
Thank you very much for having me. It was a pleasure, and thanks for all the people who joined in today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good evening, everyone. Bye-bye.
You too.